Commander Vexala stood on the observation deck of Forward Station Kelmar, watching the human transport ship dock with the station. Her forearms crossed in what her species called the posture of judgment. She had heard much about humans in the past year. They were new to the Galactic Council, a species that had barely left their home system before discovering faster-than-light travel. Now they wanted to join the peacekeeping forces. She found this amusing. Peacekeeping required strength, and humans looked soft. The airlock opened. 8 humans walked onto the station in their simple gray uniforms. They were small compared to most species. They had only 2 arms, which seemed like a design flaw. Their skin looked thin and easy to damage. The leader, a man with dark hair and calm eyes, approached Vexala and offered his hand in the human greeting gesture. "Commander Vexala, I'm Captain Minjun Park. Thank you for accepting our assignment to your unit." His voice was quiet and respectful. Vexala touched his hand briefly, noting how fragile it felt. "Captain Park, welcome to Kelmar Station. I hope you understand that frontier peacekeeping is dangerous work." "We understand, Commander." Park smiled slightly. "We're here to help, however we can." The other humans introduced themselves. Lieutenant Sarah Chen was their medical officer, a woman with gentle eyes who immediately asked about the station's medical facilities. Sergeant David Kim was their engineer, already looking at the station's systems with interest. The others were specialists in various fields. Over the following days, Vexala observed the humans with growing confusion. They did not behave like warriors. Chen spent hours in the medical bay, helping treat minor injuries among the station's personnel. She learned everyone's names and asked about their families. Kim wandered through the station, fixing equipment that had been broken for months. He refused payment, saying he enjoyed solving problems. Park attended every strategy meeting but rarely spoke. When he did, his suggestions were always about avoiding conflict rather than winning it. He proposed negotiation tactics, supply route improvements, and civilian protection protocols. Never attack strategies, never weapons improvements. The other species at the station began making jokes. "The humans are here to hug the enemy to death," laughed Krovik, a Trell warrior. "They will defeat raiders with kindness and repair tools." Vexala did not join the mockery, but she shared the concern. She had fought in 12 campaigns across 9 worlds. She knew what combat required. It required fury. It required the willingness to harm before being harmed. It required the ability to shut off gentle feelings and become a weapon. Humans seemed incapable of this transformation. She watched Park one evening in the common area. He sat with a group of young Tesseran civilians who worked on the station. Tesserans were the local species, small and peaceful. Park was teaching them a human game with cards, laughing when they won, patient when they didn't understand the rules. This was their military commander, playing cards with children. "Captain Park," Vexala approached him after the Tessarans left. "May I speak frankly?" "Of course, Commander." "You and your people have been here 3 weeks. I have seen you build, heal, teach, and repair. I have not seen you train for combat. The frontier is dangerous. Raiders attack settlements regularly. If we deploy to a crisis, I need to know my people can fight. Can yours?" Park looked at her for a long moment. His expression remained calm. "Commander, we trained for 6 years before coming here. We know how to fight. We just prefer not to unless necessary." "Preferring not to fight does not win battles, Captain." "No," Park agreed. "But it prevents many battles from happening at all. We've found that most conflicts can be resolved without violence if you try hard enough." Vexala's translator struggled with the human concept. Try hard enough. As if warfare was a puzzle to be solved rather than a reality to be faced. She dismissed the conversation and returned to her duties, making a mental note to keep the humans away from actual combat situations. They would be a liability. 2 days later, the distress call came. Vexala was in the command center when the signal arrived. It was from a Tessaran settlement 400 kilometers south. The message was broken and filled with screaming. She caught fragments. Raiders. Krovar pact. They're killing everyone. Please help. Then silence. Krovar raiders. Vexala's spine stiffened. The Krovar pact was a loose alliance of pirate clans that operated in the frontier regions. They were vicious, well-armed, and numerous. They attacked settlements, took what they wanted, and killed anyone who resisted. Sometimes they killed people even when no one resisted, simply because they enjoyed it. All personnel to deployment bay, Vexala announced over the station comms. Combat situation, full armament. 20 Kethran warriors assembled in the bay within minutes, checking weapons and armor. They were professionals, every one of them a veteran. Vexala felt confident with this force. They could handle most raider groups. Then the humans arrived. All 8 of them walked into the deployment bay in combat gear. Their armor looked light compared to Kethran battlesuits. Their weapons were simple kinetic rifles, nothing fancy. Park approached Vexala calmly. Commander, requesting permission to join the response force. Vexala wanted to refuse. She didn't want to protect fragile humans while fighting raiders. But protocol required joint operations between all peacekeeping species. She couldn't exclude them without formal justification. Permission granted, she said reluctantly. But you will follow my orders exactly. Stay behind the Kethran line. If the situation becomes too dangerous, retreat to the transport. Understood? Understood, Commander. Park showed no offense at being told to hide. This worried Vexala even more. A warrior should have pride. They boarded the transport and launched toward the settlement. During the flight, Vexala watched the humans. They sat quietly, checking their equipment with methodical precision. Chen was reviewing medical supplies. Kim was examining a tactical map. Park sat with his eyes closed, breathing slowly. Sergeant Revo, one of Vexala's best warriors, leaned toward her. Commander, the humans seem very calm. Have they seen combat before? I don't know, Vexala admitted. Stay close to them during the fight. Make sure they don't get themselves killed. The transport descended through clouds. Below, smoke rose from the settlement. Even from the air, Vexala could see bodies in the streets. The transport landed at the edge of the settlement. Vexala deployed her warriors in standard formation with practiced efficiency. The Kethrans moved in pairs, weapons ready, using the damaged buildings for cover. She placed the humans in the center of the formation, where they would have maximum protection. The settlement was worse than the aerial view suggested. Buildings burned, bodies lay in the street, both Tessaran civilians and what looked like local security forces. The security forces had fought back but had been overwhelmed. Their weapons lay scattered near their bodies. Vexala heard crying. Somewhere in the settlement, there were survivors. Her tactical display showed heat signatures ahead. Approximately 30 raiders in the central square. They were looting, dragging items from buildings. Some were laughing. She could hear them through her helmet's audio pickups. Park moved up beside her silently. He studied the tactical display, then looked at the settlement layout. Commander, permission to speak? What is it, Captain? The civilians, the ones still alive. They'll be in the buildings around the square. The raiders will use them as shields or hostages when we engage. Vexala had reached the same conclusion. Yes, we'll need to be careful. Precision shots only. We can take forward positions, Park offered. My people are trained for close-quarters combat in civilian areas. We can minimize collateral damage. Vexala looked at him. He was volunteering for the most dangerous positions. Either he was braver than she thought, or he didn't understand what forward positions meant in combat. She suspected the latter. Captain Park, forward positions take the most fire. Your people have light armor. We know, Commander, but we're accurate shots. If we're closer, we have better angles to avoid hitting civilians. Against her better judgment, Vexala agreed. Maybe the humans would be useful as a distraction while her warriors did the real fighting. Fine. Take positions on the left flank. Wait for my signal. The humans moved. Vex'ala expected them to rush or be clumsy. Instead, they flowed through the ruins like water, silent and smooth. Each one found cover and settled into position. They made no sound. Their movements were economical and practiced. Park gave hand signals. The humans adjusted positions without speaking. Their weapons came up, already aimed at the square. Vex'ala revised her estimate slightly. They at least knew how to move tactically. She gave the attack signal. The Kethrans charged with traditional war cries, announcing their presence as was customary. It was proper for warriors to declare themselves before battle. The raiders in the square spun around, grabbing weapons. Then Vex'ala heard something that made her spine freeze. Nothing. The humans made no war cries, no battle shouts, no announcements. They simply started firing with mechanical precision. Raiders dropped before they could raise their weapons. The humans' rifles made efficient clicking sounds, then silence as raiders fell. 3 seconds into the battle, 6 raiders were down. The humans hadn't moved from their positions. They just aimed and fired, as if they were at a practice range. The raiders scattered, taking cover. They returned fire. Energy bolts and kinetic rounds filled the air. Vex'ala and her warriors engaged fully, trading shots with the raiders. It was chaotic as combat always was. Warriors on both sides shouted, weapons overheated, people dove for better cover. The humans remained silent. Vex'ala found this deeply disturbing. Battle was supposed to have emotion, fear, anger, excitement. The sounds of warfare were part of warfare itself. But the humans made no sound except for their weapons firing. She glanced at Park's position. He was leaning around cover, firing 3-round bursts, then ducking back. His face was completely neutral. He could have been doing paperwork. The Raiders' commander shouted orders. Vex'ala's translator picked them up. He was sending a squad around the left flank. They were going to try to get behind the human positions. She opened her comm to warn Park. Before she could speak, the raiders made a critical error. To flank the humans, they had to cross an alley where Tesseran civilians were hiding. Vex'ala saw the huddled families through a broken wall, parents covering children with their own bodies. The raiders saw them too. One raider raised his weapon toward the civilians, grinning. He said something in Krovar language. The translator turned it into words Vex'ala wished she hadn't heard, something about target practice. Lieutenant Chen was closest to that position. What happened next, Vex'ala would remember for the rest of her life. Chen moved, not rushed, not panicked. She simply moved with impossible efficiency. One moment she was behind cover. The next, she was in the open, between the raiders and the civilians. Her rifle came up. 3 shots, 3 raiders down. Another raider swung his weapon toward her. Chen dropped into a slide, firing as she moved. The raider fell. 5 seconds. 4 armed raiders neutralized. Chen rolled back into cover and resumed her previous position as if nothing had happened. Her expression hadn't changed. She didn't look angry or frightened or proud. She looked focused, the way someone looks when organizing files. Vex'ala felt something she rarely experienced. Fear, not of the raiders. Fear of what she had just witnessed. Chen had killed with the efficiency of a machine, but machines didn't choose to protect. Machines didn't position themselves between threats and children. Chen had made a choice, executed it perfectly, and returned to her task. No hesitation, no second thoughts. The battle continued. More raiders appeared from buildings. 50 now, maybe more. They had reinforcements nearby. This was a larger group than the initial report suggested. Vex'ala assessed the situation. They were outnumbered. The smart tactical decision was to fall back to a better defensive position, call for additional support, and engage from a distance. She opened the command channel. All units, tactical withdrawal. Fall back to Commander. Park's voice was quiet on the channel. Request permission to maintain position. Captain, we're outnumbered nearly 2-to-1. We need to regroup. If we withdraw, the raiders will be between us and the civilians. They'll use them as shields. We can't allow that. Vex'Allah's tactical mind understood his concern, but warfare required accepting bad options sometimes. Captain Park, I appreciate your concern for civilians, but we cannot help them if we're dead. We withdraw and return with more force. There was a pause. When Park spoke again, his voice was still calm, still quiet. But something in it made Vex'Allah's skin prickle. With respect, Commander, we're not withdrawing. My people will hold this position. You're welcome to pull your warriors back if you feel it's necessary. We'll cover your retreat. 8 humans offering to cover the retreat of 20 Kethran veterans. It should have been insulting. Instead, it was terrifying, because Park said it the way someone might offer to hold a door open. A simple courtesy, a task he was confident he could complete. Vex'Allah looked at her warriors. They were listening to the exchange. Sergeant Revo met her eyes and nodded slightly. He was thinking the same thing she was. If they withdrew and left the humans, they would never live down the shame. Better to die fighting beside allies than to abandon them. All units, maintain positions, Vex'Allah ordered. We hold the line. The raiders charged. The raiders came in waves, shouting and firing wildly. Vex'Allah had seen this tactic before. It was meant to overwhelm defenders through sheer aggression and numbers. Against most opponents, it worked. Fear made people miss shots. Panic made them waste ammunition. The psychological pressure of facing a screaming horde broke formations. The Kethrans held firm. They were veterans. They had faced charges before. They fired in controlled bursts, took cover when needed, and supported each other. It was solid, professional combat. The humans were something else entirely. Vex'Allah watched them between her own engagements. They weren't fighting the way warriors fought. There was no excitement, no battle fury, no desperate energy. They moved like they were solving a mathematics problem. Raider here, adjust angle by 3 degrees, fire, threat eliminated. Next problem, raider there, calculate trajectory to avoid civilian structure behind, fire, threat eliminated. Next problem. Sergeant Kim had set up behind a collapsed wall with clear sight lines down 2 streets. He fired rhythmically like a metronome. 1 shot every 4 seconds. Every shot dropped a raider. He never rushed, never hesitated, just maintained his steady rhythm. Vex'Allah counted. 18 shots, 18 raiders down. He paused to reload with smooth, practiced movements, then resumed his rhythm. A raider threw a grenade toward the human position. Before Vex'Allah could shout a warning, one of the human specialists shot it in midair. The explosion blossomed harmlessly above the street. The human who made the shot didn't celebrate or express relief. He just shifted his aim to the raider who had thrown it and fired. Chen was still protecting the alley with the civilians. 3 more raiders tried to approach that position. Chen eliminated them with the same efficient movements she'd shown before. No wasted motion, no dramatic gestures, just mechanical precision. After the 3rd raider fell, she called out in the Tesseran language, telling the civilians to stay down and stay quiet. Her voice was gentle and reassuring, the same voice she used in the medical bay. Then she returned to firing at raiders as if she hadn't just switched between protecting and eliminating with no transition at all. This was what frightened Vex'Allah most. The humans didn't seem to struggle with the duality. They weren't warriors who had to suppress their gentle instincts to fight. They weren't healers who reluctantly picked up weapons. They were both things simultaneously, completely and without conflict. The raider charge broke against their defense. Bodies littered the square. The survivors retreated to cover, their aggressive shouts replaced by uncertainty. Park's voice came over the command channel. "Commander, they're regrouping. They'll try a different approach. Watch for flanking attempts." "Agreed," Vex'Allah responded. She had to acknowledge that the humans had held their positions effectively. More than effectively. Her tactical display showed the casualty ratio. 0 peacekeepers wounded, 23 raiders eliminated, more wounded. The humans accounted for 15 of those eliminations with only 8 soldiers. The numbers should have been impossible. It violated everything Vexala knew about combat mathematics. The raiders tried flanking twice more. Both times the humans detected the movement and responded before Vexala's own sensors picked up the threat. It was as if they could predict what the raiders would do before they did it. She asked Park about it during a brief lull. "Captain, how are your people anticipating enemy movements so accurately?" Park reloaded his rifle before answering. "We're not anticipating, Commander. We're observing. The raiders' tactics are straightforward. They're aggressive but not creative. Once you understand their pattern, you know what they'll try next." "You make it sound simple." "The tactics are simple. Executing them under pressure is the hard part. That just takes practice and focus." Practice and focus. As if warfare was a skill like engineering or medicine, something you studied and mastered through repetition. Vexala had always thought of combat as something more primal, an expression of violence that required rage and instinct. The humans treated it like accounting. Another wave of raiders emerged. This time they had brought heavier weapons. Vexala saw the energy cannon being set up in a distant building. It could destroy their cover and turn the battle. "Cannon emplacement, northeast building, 3rd floor," she announced over the comm. "I see it," Kim responded. "Give me 30 seconds. Vexala wanted to ask what he could possibly do in 30 seconds. The cannon was 400 meters away behind reinforced walls. Then she saw Kim pull out a small device and begin making adjustments to it. 20 seconds later, he threw the device. It arced high and far, impossibly far for a hand-thrown object. It sailed through the broken window where the cannon was being assembled. The explosion was precise and contained. Just enough to destroy the cannon and eliminate the raiders operating it. Not enough to collapse the building or damage surrounding structures where civilians might be hiding. "Threat neutralized," Kim reported in the same tone someone might use to confirm they'd completed a repair. The raiders' coordination began falling apart. They'd expected to face standard peacekeepers, forces that would match their aggression with aggression, that would make mistakes under pressure, that would react emotionally. Instead, they faced humans who reacted to violence the way technicians reacted to broken equipment. As a problem requiring a solution. Nothing personal, nothing emotional, just efficient problem-solving with lethal precision. Vexala realized she was witnessing something the rest of the galaxy hadn't understood about humans yet. They weren't weak, they weren't soft. They had simply optimized compassion and violence into 2 separate tools, and they could switch between them without any transition time at all. More raiders died. Their commander shouted orders that became increasingly desperate. He was losing control of his force. Then the raiders did something unforgivable. They grabbed Tesseran civilians. A group of raiders dragged 5 Tesserans into the open square, holding weapons to their heads. The translator picked up the commander's shouts. He wanted the peacekeepers to withdraw, or he would execute the hostages. It was a standard tactic. Take innocents as shields. Force the enemy to choose between completing the mission and protecting lives. It usually worked because most species couldn't kill civilians, even to reach military targets. Vexala prepared to negotiate. This would become a hostage situation. It would take hours. Eventually, they would reach some agreement. Some hostages might die. It was tragic, but inevitable. Park stood up from his cover. He didn't raise his weapon. He simply walked into the open, hands visible at his sides. Vexala shouted at him to get down, but he ignored her. He walked steadily toward the raiders holding hostages, stopping 30 meters away. The raider commander laughed. He said something in Krovar that translated as mockery about humans being weak and foolish. Park spoke calmly, his voice carrying clearly across the square. "You will release those people now. You will leave this world immediately. If you do these things, you will live." The raider commander laughed harder. "Or what, human? You'll hug us to death? Park's expression didn't change. "Or we'll show you what humans really are." The commander's laugh died. Something in Park's tone, or his absolute stillness, or the way the other 7 humans had simultaneously stood and acquired perfect firing solutions on every raider in the square. Whatever it was, the commander felt it. He tried to regain his bravado. He put his weapon against a Tesseran's head and pulled the trigger. The hostage fell. Park nodded once, just a small movement of his head. Then he turned and walked back to cover with the same steady pace. His voice came over the command channel. "All units, weapons free, end this." What happened next, Vexala would never fully be able to explain in her official report. The humans moved. Vexala had seen many combat styles in her 12 campaigns. She had witnessed the Kethran Fury Charge, where warriors overwhelmed enemies through aggressive speed. She had observed Vorlak's berserkers who attacked with such wild abandon that they seemed immune to pain. She had watched Trell's swarm tactics, where hundreds of small fighters attacked from all directions simultaneously. What the humans did was none of these things. They moved through the battlefield like precision instruments. Each step was calculated, each shot was measured. There was no rushing, no charging, no wild attacks. They advanced with terrible patience, and that patience was more frightening than any battle cry could ever be. Chen reached the hostages first. 2 raiders stood between her and the terrified Tesserans. They fired at her. She moved sideways, and somehow the shots missed by centimeters. Her own weapon came up. 2 shots. Both raiders dropped. She reached the hostages and immediately positioned herself as a physical barrier between them and all other threats. Her rifle never stopped tracking targets while she spoke gentle words to the terrified Tesserans in their own language. Kim and 2 other humans breached a building where raiders had fortified. Vexala watched through her tactical display. The humans entered through 3 different points simultaneously, moving in perfect coordination despite having no verbal communication. The building's internal sensors showed the raiders trying to set up crossfire positions. It didn't matter. The humans flowed through the structure like water, always where the raiders weren't looking, always with clear shots, always avoiding the walls that civilians might be sheltering behind. 30 seconds. 12 raiders neutralized. 3 more surrendered. The humans secured the prisoners with quick efficiency and moved on. Park coordinated everything through minimal hand signals. The humans needed almost no communication. They seemed to understand each other's movements instinctively. When one human suppressed a position, another was already flanking it. When one reloaded, another had already adjusted to cover their sector. Vexala and her Kethran warriors fought alongside them, but she felt like she was watching something beyond her experience. Her warriors were professionals, they were skilled, but the humans operated on a different level. It wasn't that they were better fighters in terms of physical ability, it was their absolute precision, their complete lack of hesitation, the way they remained utterly calm no matter what happened. A raider threw a grenade toward a building marked as civilian shelter. Kim shot it out of the air, then shot the raider, then returned to his previous target all in one fluid motion. No pause. No reaction to how close the civilians had come to death. Just continuous action. The raider commander realized he was losing. Badly. His forces were being systematically dismantled. He shouted orders to retreat to the compound at the edge of the settlement. The surviving raiders ran for it, abandoning their positions in panic. The humans pursued, not quickly, not slowly, at exactly the pace needed to prevent the raiders from organizing a defense while avoiding running into ambushes. They advanced like a tide, inevitable, unstoppable, patient. The raiders reached the compound and sealed the doors. They had taken more Tesseran hostages with them. Vexala's sensors showed 15 raiders inside, holding 8 civilians. Standard siege situation. This would normally take hours to resolve. Negotiations. Eventually, some kind of exchange. Park examined the compound through his rifle scope. He spent 2 full minutes studying it, his expression neutral. Then he looked at Vexala. "Commander, requesting tactical command for compound breach." Vexala should have refused. This was too delicate, too many civilians at risk. But she had watched the humans fight. She had seen their precision. Against her training and instincts, she nodded. "You have command, Captain." Park gave quiet instructions to his team. The humans spread around the compound, taking positions. They moved with their characteristic silence. Chen established a medical station nearby. Kim examined the compound's structure, making notes. Then Park walked toward the compound's main door, unarmed and alone. Vexala nearly ordered him back, but something made her wait. Park stopped 3 meters from the door. "This is Captain Minjun Park of the Galactic Peacekeeping Forces. You are surrounded. You cannot escape. Release the hostages and surrender, and you will be treated according to standard protocols. You will live." The Raider commander's voice came through a speaker. "We kill hostages if you attack." "I understand," Park said calmly, "but you need to understand something too. My people have been very controlled so far. We've been careful, patient. We've tried very hard not to harm anyone except combatants. We've given you chances to leave, to surrender. To end this peacefully." "Then you're weak," the commander shouted. "No," Park said, and his voice dropped lower. "We've been choosing gentleness. There's a difference between choosing something and being unable to do otherwise. You're about to learn that difference." "Big talk from—" The commander shot one of the hostages through the speaker system. Vexala heard the shot, heard the scream, heard the body fall. Park was silent for 5 seconds. Then he nodded to himself and walked back to his team. "They've made their choice," he said quietly. "We breach in 60 seconds. Chen, prepare for immediate trauma care. Everyone else, you know your assignments. Hostages are primary. I want 0 civilian casualties. These raiders hurt their last innocent person today." Something had changed in Park's voice. It was still calm, still controlled, but there was an edge to it now. Not anger, something colder than anger, like hearing ice crack under weight. The humans checked their equipment one final time. Kim attached something to the compound wall. The other humans positioned at windows and alternate entry points. Chen had medical supplies ready and was reviewing her scanning equipment to locate the hostages the moment they had access. Vexala realized her hands were shaking slightly, not from fear of the raiders, from what she was about to witness. "Commander," Park said, "you might want to hold position here. This will be over very quickly." "I'm coming in with you, Captain." Park looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "Stay behind our entry team. It's going to be loud." Kim triggered his device. The wall exploded inward. Not destructively, but precisely. It created an opening exactly large enough for 2 humans to enter side by side. Before the smoke cleared, the humans were inside. Vexala followed. What she saw in the next 4 minutes would stay with her forever, not because of its violence. She had seen violence. What haunted her was its precision. The humans moved through the compound like they had memorized every room. They hadn't. They simply reacted faster than thought. A raider appeared in a doorway. He died before he could pull his trigger. Another tried to use a hostage as a shield. Kim's shot went past the hostage's ear with centimeters to spare and struck the raider in the head. The hostage didn't even know how close the bullet had been. Chen moved through the chaos with absolute focus, reaching hostages and pulling them to safety. She cleared 3 rooms while eliminating 2 raiders who tried to stop her. When she found an injured Tesseran, she dropped into combat medic mode instantly, treating the wound while another human covered her position. The raider commander made his last stand in the central room. He had 2 hostages in front of him, weapons pressed to their heads. "Stop or they die!" Park and another human, Specialist Ji-Wan Lee, entered the room from opposite sides. The commander couldn't watch both. He chose Park. That was his final mistake. Lee's shot was impossible. The angle was wrong. The hostage was too close. The target was too small. But Lee took the shot anyway, and the commander fell with a neat hole exactly where his brainstem met his skull. The hostages weren't touched. 4 minutes after breach, all hostages were secure. All raiders were dead or unconscious. Not one bullet had struck a civilian. Chen was already treating the wounded, her hands gentle and sure. She spoke softly to a terrified Tesseran child, promising safety, while her uniform was still splattered with raider blood. Vexala stood in the compound's central room, watching the humans transition from combat to caregiving. Park was checking on hostages. Kim was securing prisoners. The others had formed protective positions around the civilians, weapons still ready but expressions soft. They moved between roles without pause, without transition, without internal conflict. The settlement was quiet now, except for the sounds of relief and grief. Tesseran survivors emerged from hiding, finding their homes damaged, but their lives spared. The human medics moved among them, treating injuries and offering comfort. Chen held a crying child while scanning her for internal injuries. Kim was already assessing structural damage to buildings, marking which ones were safe to enter. Vexala watched Park coordinate the aftermath. He spoke with Tesseran community leaders, arranged for supply deliveries, organized temporary shelter. His voice was gentle and patient. The same voice that had coldly ordered the final assault. The same person. No difference. No transition. This was what disturbed her most. Not the violence itself. She was a warrior. She understood violence. What she couldn't process was how the humans contained both capacities simultaneously without any visible effort. They weren't warriors who struggled to be gentle. They weren't peaceful beings forced to fight. They were completely both, all the time. She found Park 2 hours later. He was helping repair a damaged home, working alongside Tesseran civilians. He had removed his armor and was just in his uniform, carrying building materials. When he saw Vexala, he paused and wiped sweat from his forehead. "Commander, how can I help you?" "Captain Park, I need to speak with you privately." They walked to the edge of the settlement, where the land opened into empty fields. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that would have been beautiful if Vexala's mind wasn't so full of questions. "I owe you an apology," she began. "I underestimated you and your people. You proved yourselves in combat beyond any doubt." Park shook his head slightly. "You don't owe us anything, Commander. You fought beside us. That's what matters. But I need to understand something." Vexala struggled to find the right words. "During the battle, I watched your people. I've fought alongside many species. I've seen rage, fear, desperation. I saw none of these things in human eyes. I saw nothing, just purpose. It frightened me more than any enemy I've ever faced." Park was quiet for a moment, looking at the sunset. "What did you see in our eyes, Commander?" "That's just it. I saw nothing. No emotion, no feeling. You moved like machines, but machines don't choose to protect. Machines don't position themselves between threats and children. You were alive, aware, choosing every action, but without any visible emotion. How is that possible?" "We felt everything," Park said softly. "Rage, fear, horror at what was happening, hatred for what the raiders did. All of it." "Then why didn't I see it?" "Because we couldn't afford to show it. Because the hostages couldn't carry our emotions on top of their trauma. Because showing rage might have made us sloppy, and being sloppy could have killed civilians. Because feelings are luxuries, Commander. Useful in their time and place, but during combat, they're weights that slow you down and cloud judgment." Vexala's translator struggled with this concept. "You suppress your emotions during battle? Not suppress. Set aside. There's a difference. Suppression means forcing something down. It builds pressure. Eventually it explodes. Setting aside means acknowledging the feeling exists, accepting it, and choosing to address it later when addressing it won't cost innocent lives. And later? When do you release what you've set aside? Park smiled. But it was a sad smile. Tonight, in our quarters, where no one else has to carry that weight. Chen will probably cry, Kim will sit quietly and process. Lee writes in a journal, I meditate. We each have our ways of letting out what we held in. Vexala understood then. The humans didn't lack emotions. They weaponized discipline. They turned self-control into the sharpest tool in their arsenal. Other species fought with rage or trained instinct. Humans fought with absolute conscious choice. Every action deliberate, every emotion acknowledged but postponed until it could be safely addressed. This is why other species call you soft, she said. They see the gentleness you choose most of the time and assume it's all you're capable of. Yes, and we let them think that. It's useful. If people underestimate you, they make mistakes around you. They reveal things they would hide from an obvious threat. They get comfortable. And when we actually need to act, we have every advantage because they never saw us coming. But you don't enjoy the deception. No, Park admitted. We'd prefer to never need violence at all. That's not weakness, Commander, that's experience. Humans have a long history with warfare. We're good at it, very good. But we also learned what warfare costs. The trauma, the loss, the way it damages everyone it touches, even the winners. So we choose peace whenever possible. Not because we can't fight, because we know too well what fighting requires and what it takes from you. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Vexala asked the question that had been bothering her since the compound breach. Captain Park, when you walked toward that door and the commander mocked you, what did you feel? Park was quiet for so long that Vexala thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was almost a whisper. Terror. Of the raiders? No. Terror that we wouldn't be fast enough, that we'd make a mistake, that we'd breach the compound and find we'd been too slow, too careful, and more hostages had died while we were being precise. Terror of failing the people depending on us. That's the fear that drives us, Commander, not fear of getting hurt. Fear of not being good enough to protect others. Vexala felt something shift in her understanding. So you weren't fearless during the battle? No, we were full of fear, but the fear didn't make us freeze or run. It made us sharp, focused, more determined. Fear is just another tool if you know how to use it. A Tesseran child ran past them, laughing, playing despite everything that had happened. Her mother called her back gently, relief clear in every line of her body. Both alive because 8 humans had chosen to stand between them and violence. The galaxy doesn't understand you, Vexala said. They think humans are weak because you build when you could destroy, because you heal when you could harm, because you try every other option before resorting to violence. And now you understand differently? Yes. Now I understand that humans are terrifying, not because you lack control, but because your control is absolute. You choose gentleness, and that choice is conscious and complete. But you can also choose violence with the same completeness, the same precision, the same lack of hesitation, and the transition between them requires no effort because you're always both simultaneously, capable of infinite compassion and infinite ruthlessness, depending on what the situation requires. Park nodded slowly. Is that a good thing or a bad thing in your assessment? I don't know yet, Vexala admitted. But I know that I'm grateful to fight beside you rather than against you. They walked back toward the settlement. Chen had set up a proper medical station and was training Tesseran locals in basic emergency care. Kim had organized repair teams. The other humans had integrated completely with the civilian population, helping rebuild, sharing food, playing with children. No one looking at them would guess these same people had moved through a compound like death itself just hours ago. Vexala would file her report when they returned to the station. She would detail the tactical decisions, the casualty ratios, the successful hostage rescue, but she would also add something else. A personal observation that would eventually spread through the Galactic Council's military networks. She would write about the day she learned true fear. Not fear of what humans would do to enemies. Every species could be violent when necessary. No, what frightened her was understanding that humans could become anything necessary to protect the innocent, and that transformation required no rage, no hatred, no loss of control, just choice. Conscious, deliberate, absolute choice. They could be healers with hands that had killed. They could be builders who knew exactly how to destroy. They could play with children and plan combat operations with the same mental clarity. They were gentle by choice, not limitation. And that choice could be withdrawn at any moment without any visible warning or internal struggle. 1 month later, Vexala heard that other stations had started requesting human peacekeepers. The word had spread. The Krovar Pact had marked all human-protected zones as no-raid territories. Other raider groups began avoiding any area where humans were stationed. The humans continued their work, building, healing, teaching, playing cards with locals, fixing broken equipment, being exactly as gentle and helpful as they had always been. But now the galaxy was starting to understand what Vexala had learned. That gentleness backed by absolute capability was more powerful than any amount of aggressive posturing. That the most dangerous thing in the galaxy wasn't something that wanted to harm you. It was something kind that chose to be kind, but could choose otherwise in an instant if you threatened what it protected. Vexala saw Park one last time before his unit transferred to another posting. He was saying goodbye to Tesseran children he'd befriended. They hugged him and gave him drawings they'd made. He accepted each one with genuine warmth, carefully placing them in his pack. She asked him one final question. "Captain, do you ever regret what you had to do during that battle?" Park looked at the children running and playing nearby. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the raiders made choices that led to their deaths. But I don't regret protecting these people. I don't regret ensuring they survive to have futures. That's what lets me sleep at night, Commander. Not that we fought well, but that we fought for something worth fighting for." He smiled. "Besides, the scary part was never the fighting. The scary part was imagining what would happen if we failed. That's real fear. Everything else is just action." Vexala watched him leave with his team, 8 humans heading off to whatever assignment came next. Ready to build, ready to heal, ready to protect, ready to become whatever was necessary. She finally understood her own report's title. The Day I Battled Beside Humans and Learned True Fear. The fear wasn't what they would do. It was understanding that they would do anything, become anything, sacrifice anything to protect the innocent, and they would do it all with the same calm precision they brought to every task. The gentle ones, the builders, the healers, the most dangerous beings in the galaxy, and the safest ones to stand behind.